Microphone. All right, team, we're recording. Our presenter this evening has done just about everything anybody in the auxiliary has ever asked him, which is amazing. He is active in so many programs, I can't count them all. But we are very lucky to have him presenting this evening. And let's give a warm IMSEP welcome for Dave Klein. Welcome aboard.
Thank you, Bob. And good evening, everyone. We're going to do chapters 11, 12, and 13. They're not as interesting as some of the past chapters, and I'll try to make them not make you fall asleep. We're going to start with the federal laws and regulations and then move over to occupational health and safety and conclude with conduct and ethics. So can everyone see my screen okay?
Yes.
No problems? And for some reason, there we go.
Everyone's nodding. You're good.
Good. All right, great. So for IMSEP, you just need to have a basic understanding of the United States Code, the Code of Federal Regulations, and the Federal Register, and to some extent how they relate. And also important is how to find them. And I had some links, but I forgot to put them in a notepad to post up to chat, but I can try and do that at some point if we take a break. So it's minimal what you need to know. Otherwise, if you look at it as a whole, there's 250,000 pages of text between the code, the CFR, and the Federal Register at least. And I can't imagine how they found anything before the internet. It's the code and the CFR and the Federal Register that gives the Coast Guard its legal authority and administrative enforcement abilities. The United States Code, it's statutory law. So what goes into the United States Code is what's passed by Congress. So when they pass a law, that's where it goes. There's 53 titles are organized by subject, and it provides the basic framework from which the country and the government function. So, and here's a screenshot of the U.S. Code. It's a legal website, and I believe this is linked from the IMSEP manual. So if you want to get to the U.S. Code or the Code of Federal Regulations, go to the IMSEP manual, and they should be hyperlinked in the manual. And all you need to do is hold down the Control key and click on them, and you'll get directed to them. But you'll see the Title I is General Provisions of Congress, and when you get to Title 14, that's the Coast Guard. Every time you click on a link, you're drilling down. There's lots of drilling to do, and once you get down to the bottom, you'll see basically the foundation of the government. So relevant code to the Coast Guard is Title 14, which is the Coast Guard, Title 13, which is navigation and navigable waters. That's where you would find laws about ATONs, PATONs, anything having to do with waterways. The Title 40 is the protection of the environment. That's where you would find the Clean Water Act or the Federal Water Pollution Control Act, which was the predecessor. And then 46 is shipping. Whenever a new law is passed, it often amends an old law or a law in another title. So, for example, when the Superfund law was passed, or the Oil Pollution Act was passed, they had to amend laws in Title 40 and probably in Title 14 also. The Code of Federal Regulations, this is regulatory law. Now, this was put into use after the Depression for the most part, because after the Depression, there were a number of a lot of legislation which created a number of agencies, and Congress needed a way to delegate authority to these agencies. So the Code of Federal Regulations was expanded, and it's 50 titles, and it provides for administration and enforcement of United States Code. It's frequently amended because things change so quickly. So, for example, if there's changes in an EPA law, it will be the code will be updated. It also provides agencies and citizens a central filing and publication system to keep track of rules. And then the last thing is the code is the or I'm sorry, these are titles relevant to the Coast Guard, and that's Title 33 is navigation and navigable waterways. Title 40 is protection of the environment, and it's not to be confused with Title 40 of the U.S. Code, which I believe is the same title. Title 46 is shipping, and then Title 49 is transportation. Here's a screenshot from the Code of Federal Regulations. This is the government's website, and I don't know if any of you are UPVs, but I remember I took a UPV course, and I in it I had seen T-boat and K-boats, and I had no idea what those were. And I thought, is that the way the hull is constructed, or is there a giant K in there or something? But actually, those names, T-boat and K-boat, derive from the subchapters of Title 46, which is shipping. And if you see subchapter K is small passenger vessel carrying more than 150 passengers. Subchapter T is small passenger vessel under 100 gross tons. And that's why when we talk about Medicare, and this isn't related to the Coast Guard, but we talk about Medicare Part A, Part B, Part C, Part D, this terminology all derives from subchapters or in the Code of Federal Regulations. The Federal Register, this is the official journal of the U.S. where everything goes. So any new rules, any proposed changes, any final rules, public comment all goes in here. So this is where the Code of Federal Regulations can get changed. The code can be petitioned for a change. For example, if I just read a petition from a number of environmental groups on uncovered coal cars on trains, and they were petitioning to have the regulations reviewed that would allow or no longer allow coal train cars to travel uncovered. And so this petition goes into the Federal Register. The regulators look at it, and at some point there'll be a public comment, and a final decision will be made. That'll go into the Federal Register, and then that goes into the Code of Federal Regulations, where it then now becomes regulatory law. Is that too confusing? And just remember that the U.S. Code and the Code of Federal Regulations are distinctively different, although they may have the same title number. So if you're looking something up, make sure you're on the correct website. Coast Guard guidance for to enforce regulations come from a number of areas, including the Code of Federal Regulations, and that's the Marine Safety Manual, navigation and vessel inspection circulars, and program-specific policy letters. These all serve to provide uniform and consistent enforcement, and they also help they also work to interpret the intent of the authority of the regulations or the law. The Marine Safety Manual is one of the main documents. It's commandant instruction and guidance for uniform and consistent practices. The Code of Federal Regulations is frequently referenced in this document. And that it also allows Coast Guard personnel to make sound decisions and fair decisions, consistent decisions affecting marine safety and marine safety subject matter. Navigation and vessel inspection circulars. These are updated and detailed guidance on enforcement or compliance with marine safety regulations. It ensures that inspections and compliance are consistent. They're non-directive, meaning there's no force of law here. They're advisory, or not advisory. It's just that they're not used. They're not an instrument to enforce law. And they're used both by the Coast Guard and the maritime industry because the maritime industry, they want also to be generally to be in compliance, and they don't want to be caught off guard and find themselves out of compliance and unable to keep their vessels on the water, or keep moving so they're making money. I guess something analogous to this might be the local notice to mariners, where you keep getting updated information almost on a real-time basis. This is a NVIC document, and you'll see it's voluntary compliance with sewage regulations. Annexed to MARPOL, you'll see MARPOL is referenced. The Federal Register is referenced, and these are on the Coast Guard website. They're in date order if you ever wanted to read one. Then there's finally program-specific policy letters. These are usually specific for a procedure, and they're issued by the commandant, and they're also available to the public. Here's a sample of one, and it just shows, you can see it references the U.S. Code, it references the Code of Federal Regulations, and it talks about guidance for determining inspection status of publicly owned oceanographic research vessels. I take a drink here, I'm losing my voice. So we're almost to the end of chapter 11. As far as a summary, the federal laws and regulations, the questions on the exam there aren't that many, at least I couldn't find that many, but they're easy, at least for me. They were easy to misinterpret. In other words, I would look at a citation and I would go read it and I would get it wrong. So when you read the citations, you have to pay attention to detail. And remember, the people that write these they don't write detective novels in their spare time. The writing is very technical, and it's in so many pieces. So when you click on a link, there'll be a bunch of links below that with more citations. And when doing so, you'll have to read it multiple times, or at least I always do. So that's the end of chapter 11. Moving on to chapter 12. Are there any questions? No? Okay. So occupational safety and health. A couple of disclaimers here. The information here is provided for educational purposes, and does not constitute permission to participate in marine safety activities. What that means is do not self-deploy. If a bunch of tanker cars roll up off the railroad tracks by your house, don't go out there and offer to help. The next thing is that auxiliarists are prohibited from entering any confined space. even if it's tested and designated for workers. And that is somewhere in the Code of Federal Regulations, I believe, but I was not able to find it in time for this evening. And one other thing that I might mention is that for working in marine safety in this context requires a very high skilled auxiliarist, someone who probably has their MPRO-PIN or Trident, however it's referred to now, and has a lot of training and probably a lot of experience. But that doesn't mean, what that means is it's just something to work for. So the risks in marine safety are unique in that there are many of them and that they are enormous. You have water, the most significant force on the earth for natural force. You have falls, you have heights, you have large objects moving, you have electricity and electrocution, asphyxiation and toxic and noxious substances, and asbestos. All these risks exist. So that's why it is a unique risk profile and requires so much training. The Coast Guard's Occupational Health and Industrial Hygiene Program is administered under the Work-Life Division of Human Resources, and it's on their website. If you go to the Coast Guard website and you go to Human Resources, you will find the link to their website, their page. This is their mission statement. I'm not going to read it. It's basic. One thing that's underlined is recognition and control, and those are a couple of things we will look at later in this chapter. But if you want to see it, it's on the website. How safety and occupational health units function. There's a commanding officer. There's an executive officer whose additional role is a safety officer. There's a safety and occupational health coordinator who develops and administers the program. There's a safety petty officer for units over a certain size, and they assist the SOHC and perform the SOHC's duties in the absence. There's a respirator protection administrator. They work in units that require respiratory protection, which is quite often because so many ships have so many compounds that are in the air. Occupational medical surveillance and evaluation program coordinator, that's the IMSEP program. There'll be a slide about that later. And the safety and environmental health officer, this person ensures compliance. They're kind of like in a hospital environment where you have a quality assurance department to make sure that all of the rules are being followed and the outcomes are satisfactory. The guidance for occupational health and safety derived from the Marine Safety Manual, the Medical Manual, the Occupational Medicine Manual, the Safety and Environmental Health Manual, and a ALCOS, which are similar to the NVICs. The Marine Safety Manual in Chapter 10, all the requirements for a unit health and safety program are there. It details the command organization responsibilities, also the field hazards and how to control those hazards. For the most part, all MS work is field work. The medical manual, it's 800 pages long, of course. It establishes all the procedures for healthcare standards for active duty reservists and in some cases, auxiliarists. The IMSEP program is a program that looks at exposure to service persons in which people are exposed to potentially very harmful substances such as benzene or asbestos, it gets baseline information from them, and then it tracks them throughout their careers to keep them healthy. You can, it's someone like a lot of people who work in the steel industry, or I worked in an industry with a lot of asbestos. I'm monitored every year. I go to a pulmonologist to look me over, and then every 5 years I do I think it's called spirometry test to make sure you test your lung function and capacity to see if you have any issues of onset of any asbestos-related disease. This is what they do. The Occupational Medicine Manual, this is provides policy, assigns responsibilities, and guidelines regarding the occupational medicine program. And here is where you'll find benzene exposure standards and guidelines. And benzene is very common on ships because it's in just about every petroleum product, any type of solvent or cleaner, in addition to any petroleum-related cargo that might be on board. The Safety and Health Manual is the Coast Guard's safety and environmental health program. It also assigns the responsibilities for implementation of the program and applies standards to be applied within the Coast Guard. The respiratory protection program is in this document in Chapter 9. And finally, ALCOS. These are updates in the same way that they're constantly sent out to update information on health programs and procedures. They're not available to the public. You can only access them through the Coast Guard portal and a Coast Guard workstation. There are detailed policies on pregnancy for service women working in environments in which the potential for harm exists. So moving on to marine safety field hazards. There are a number of hazards. The most common ones fall into 3 categories and 10 subcategories as they're listed in the manual. Those would be physical hazards, atmospheric hazards, and chemical hazards. Some of the physical hazards there are explosions, oxygen deficiency, radiation, slips, falls, blunt force trauma, electrical or electrocution, noise, thermal, that would be becoming hyper or hypothermic. Certainly, when you have a ton of protective gear on, you can become hyperthermic very easily. Atmospheric hazards, oxygen deficiency, is oxygen content less than 19.5%, in which case, if you are working in that environment, you risk becoming unconscious. Oxygen enrichment, of course, when you get too much oxygen, there's a risk for explosion. As far as oxygen deficiency goes, there are so many other gases which are not noxious, meaning they don't repel you, such as nitrogen or argon, helium, that can, if they become too concentrated within the air column, they displace the oxygen. You will still breathe, or you won't feel repelled to breathe, but at some point, when your oxygen level in your blood drops below 16 or 17%, you'll be unconscious, and you'll continue to breathe the oxygen deficient air until you would die. Okay. Another one, explosion hazards, flammable liquids, paint, solvents, gasoline, anything that volatilizes as gasoline does can cause an explosion. Hydrogen sulfide is especially noteworthy because It comes from rotting fish and septic systems, both of which you'll find on fishing boats. It's kind of the trifecta of noxious substances or noxious gases, in that it's poisonous, corrosive, and also flammable, potentially explosive. It is when the marine safety people, they carry hydrogen sulfide detectors anytime they go on a ship. Toxicity hazards, these are gases, vapors, particulate from cargo and non-cargo substances. We'll describe cargo, the difference between cargo and non-cargo substances in another slide or two. These can include chlorine, benzene, solvents, and asbestos. Chemical hazards, what are cargo agents and non-cargo agents? A cargo agent is a hazard, is a substance which is actually the ship's cargo, so what they're carrying. A non-cargo agent hazard is any solid, liquid, or gas that derive from the vessel or its operation. So, for example, any large ship made before, in this country, before 1982 is probably full of asbestos. The paint is lead. It's frequently sandblasted, which releases lead into the environment. There are liquids all over that can be, from which benzene can volatilize. So just the vessel in itself presents a significant hazard. Chemical hazards that are cargo agents will be carried, or liquefied or compressed gases. I live right by the Calumet River in Chicago, and I see these barges with these things full of, the barges full of liquefied natural gas, and there's all sorts of signs that say no smoking, and sometimes we'll go by when we're out on the auxiliary boat, and I'm thinking, what if somebody is? Benzene, carbon tetrachloride, there are just so many noxious and carcinogenic compounds that are hauled on ships. Other chemical hazards, non-cargo agents, which would be asbestos, as I mentioned, the ships are full of them. Hydrogen sulfide, we talked about. Carbon monoxide, that can be anywhere, and of course, in immeasurably small amounts, it can be fatal. Off-gassing from paints and solvents, sandblasting and fumigants, because they will fumigate a ship to kill off bacteria or molds. Biological hazards, these could be, anything. Ships come from all over the world, and they can bring organisms and parasites from all over the world. These are a significant hazard. So how does the Coast Guard, how do they monitor these hazards, or how do they measure them? And there's two ways. Is permissible exposure limits, and that's an OSHA. That is an OSHA standard. Threshold limit values, that's an organization of industrial hygienists, their standard. So when dealing with risk management in the field, the first thing in risk management is hazard recognition. You have to know what's there before you can implement any controls. So through training, marine safety personnel are trained to recognize any potential hazard. Once the hazard is recognized, then it has to be controlled, and there's several ways. There's ways to control it. One's engineering controls, the other one are administrative controls, and the last one is personal protective equipment controls. And the engineering controls are the first and best way to control risk, and that is just altering the workspace to minimize risks or eliminate the hazard altogether. This could be done through fall protection. It could be done from ventilation, enclosing workspaces where work is being performed, in which potentially harmful substances could be released, and ventilating them appropriately so the air is exhausted or collected and doesn't get outside of the workspace. Administrative controls, that's basically having a procedure, having a handbook of procedures, making sure your personnel are trained for the tasks at hand, and using safe work practices. The last thing is personal protective equipment. And this is last because it's you should try and engineer out as much risk as you can, so there's not as much risk of becoming exposed to something through your personal protective equipment. And it protects against risks that cannot be managed through engineering or administrative controls, and is appropriate for the hazard. And what that means is that if you're working on if someone's working on asbestos on a ship, they're not going to work in an N95 mask and booties. They're fully encapsulated from the environment, usually have a self-contained breathing apparatus or some sort of other outside air. Control strategies are through all the different manuals we've seen. The control strategies are dictated usually by those in those manuals or by regulation. They're just not simply made up as one goes along. So that's basically the end of chapter 12. Is everyone still with me? So after IMSEP counts as 2 credits towards the aux-op device, which is important. It also fulfills a requirement for the IMSEPChap11, which is marine safety education specialist, and it also fulfills a requirement for the marine safety training ribbon. Okay, I have to change slide decks. It'll take me a moment.
Well, that's going to work out great because, Missy, did you put that question out to everybody? Well, David, while you're working on that, I'll have Jim, can you answer a question for us?
Yeah, anybody that can answer.
All right, Jim Lubner, here, sir.
Well, let me try.
All right, Jim, do you see the question over in the chat thing? Missy, go ahead and read your question, would you?
Yeah, I was looking up the CFR for permit required confined spaces. So my question is, I understand that auxiliaries are not allowed into confined spaces, but are they all permit required? I guess because I've worked in permit required confined spaces before with entrance and air monitoring and fire extinguishers for hot work and things like that. So my question is, do they all require permits? Like, are we going to be able to see that there is a permit, knowing that we're going into a confined space so we know to stay away from it?
I don't know the answer to that. I'm just looking in the IMSEP manual here. They talk about regulated confined spaces. No, I don't know the answer to that. I've not worked in any qualifications that require a lot of knowledge about confined spaces.
Okay.
And James, you had some thoughts on this. Where did you get this information, James?
So I worked a lot in the hospitals. That was my career before I retired. I was in the engineering and hospitals, and all confined space. I did a lot of confined space work with boilers and that kind of thing. And by OSHA regulation, they must be labeled. So anytime we had a confined space, There's a certain amount, the size of the lettering and everything that has to be a certain placard that is put there, so anybody in the area knows that that's a confined space. So I would have to assume that that would be the same on a ship. If they had a confined space, they would have to label that.
So it should be labeled. Chris, do you have anything to add on this?
Hey, Bob,
Go ahead.
it's Jay.
Go ahead,
There,
Jay.
there is no CFR that regulates on this. It's a Coast Guard regulation for the auxiliary. And it's right. If there's a confined space, it has to be properly labeled.
Good. That's a really good question, Chris. Chris, do you have anything else? Thank you for your information, Jay. Chris, anything else you want to toss in? Are you there, Chris? I thought I saw Chris earlier. Maybe I didn't. Chris Strawman, are you here tonight? I thought I saw him earlier. Maybe not. Somebody was here and left. Maybe that was Chris. Good. Well, we're lucky to have Jay and Jim here to give us some good information. David, how's it coming? Are you having trouble getting up on your screen?
Should be up. Can everyone see it?
It's still showing chapter 11. So I think you're maybe looking at the wrong display because we're not seeing, all we're seeing.
You know what? I have to reshare the screen. Sorry.
No worries.
Ah.
Good turnout tonight. We have 36 folks, and it's great that some of the other instructors are joining us tonight. So glad Jim and Jay are here. Boysen, what's your last name? Sorry. What's your first name? I should know this, right? Go ahead and unmute yourself, Boysen. I'd have to take apart my computer to figure out the answer to this question. No? All right. Thank you, James.
It's Earl.
Earl. Okay, I'm going to put that up there. Is that okay?
It's going to take time to find the button.
No worries. I got the little clicky thing I can click so everybody knows who we are. All right, I'm going to mute myself. All right, David, as soon as you get that up there, I'll let you take it away here.
So can everyone see the full screen?
No, it's not quite up yet. You got one more step. I'm not sure how you got the last one to go up full screen, but this one we're still, oh, there you go. I think you got it.
Yeah.
You mind me asking, I noticed we're on chapter 13 and we were doing 11 previous. Are we skipping 12 or?
Well, this is an attention issue because we were very quiet when we said, and now chapter 12. So
Okay.
No, we did chapter 12. It was a subtle segue in there.
How's that?
Now you got it. Thank you, David.
Well, chapter 13 is pretty easy because after being in the auxiliary for any period of time, you've had this training at some point, and as far as conduct and ethics. So if standards of ethical conduct, basically what this says is that if you've done something bad, it's your best thing to do is own up to it as soon as possible, and because it will eventually find you. So that starts contact your chain of command, and then or supervisor, and if there's something really wrong, it'll end up with the district's legal officer. Okay. Professionalism. Basically, Don't do things in the public sphere that could be inferred as inappropriate behavior by others. Always be professional. Appearance, this should be simple. Although I do often observe other auxiliaries that have their 25-year-old ODUs that are the same color as their blue trops because they've been washed so many times. Nonetheless, when you are in your ODUs, the public cannot tell the difference between you or the active duty. So you are representing the active duty. They don't know gold thread from silver thread. So it's really important to present yourself as though you were an active duty person. That would be appropriately groomed, appropriately dressed. Attitude is very important, especially if you are in the marine safety field or if you're a boat crew, because you may come across people who are in distress. You always have to work in an affirming and constructive manner, and at the same time, be kind, but be honest. And remember, body language says a lot. Maintaining objectivity is very important. You have to, it's important because that's the only way you can apply, or any regulations can be applied consistently. If you're not objective, you can't be uniform, you can't be consistent, and that would interfere with applying any regulations or rule of law. Finally, demeanor. You have to think about difficult situations with people. People lose their tempers. People don't act professional, but as far as we're concerned, we always have to diffuse, never escalate, always remain calm. It's often noted when somebody does something bad, it's said they're having a bad day. Well, for us, we always have to have good days, even when we're having a bad day. So we have to be always calm, collected, and always respectful, regardless of how people treat us. So there's a little, darn it, this thing got messed up. This was sorry about that, no quiz, because part of it got erased when I copied it. Oh wait, there we go.
Yeah, it's one of those when it pops up, the last line is messed up. So
I do a lot of PowerPoint, and I just never mess with any of the animation because it distracts me. Some people can deal with it. Some people can supposedly multitask, but I can't. But here's the question: is success in dealing with stressful situations can benefit from what professional skill, demeanor? Who should you contact if you're engaged in a questionable situation? Supervisor, or go up the chain? What is the first thing that people notice about a marine safety officer, or anyone in the auxiliary for that fact, that's their appearance? And how do you base your decisions on facts and not personal feelings? You just have to be objective. So, any questions? I apologize for the lack of. Here are some resources, and if wanted, I can paste these into the chat. Would that help?
Sure, it would.
Okay,
yeah.
Give me 1 second.
We can do that right at the end of the.
So we're basically concluded, except for questions. And the one problem I had is, you remember, Bob, when I had the template for all the slides, and I was putting in pictures, and at some point I put in a picture, and then all the text in the previous 30 slides turned to this.
Oh no. Well, let's just continue with what we got here, David. And go ahead and through those last 3 slides, you tell them what you're going to tell them. then you tell them, and then you tell them what you told them. So those other slides were not just made up for fun.
Okay. So let me see if I can find those notes and put them in the chat. And I am like I said, I'm concluded except for any questions or discussion. And since it's the last day of school, everyone's going to get out early. Maybe. It's up to the teacher.
Well, I have a question, not directly related to any part of the class, but when I look at other trainings I've gone to, like Oxlams, ALOC, etc., we always get a list of our classmates, that we can refer back to later on if we have questions, maybe bounce them off each other. Is it possible to do that with this class?
If you want to send someone a chat in the chat, but we do try to look out for everybody, and some people are really excited about that, and other people kind of like to stay private. So no, we're not going to send out a list of everybody's name and address.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Dave, can you bring up, you've got that other nice. Let's go back to the presentation and let's look at the topics, the last 3 slides.
In chapter 13?
Yeah, the last 3 slides kind of go over everything we taught in this class.
Oh, okay.
Take a quick look at those since we're so far ahead of schedule.
I had one question. It was relating towards how do we take the test? Do we go through Aux2?
You actually can Google auxiliary NTC and it should bring it up right away.
Or you can just go into aux data 2 and there's the NTC is right there in the right-hand column. Okay, sorry, okay, so this is the last slide. Review and objectives. I can't see part of it because of the taskbar. Acquaint the student with history and the organization of the marine safety and environmental protection functions of the Coast Guard. Provide the student with an overview of the organization and content of Coast Guard marine safety and environmental protection programs. Provide the student with a basic working knowledge of the Marine Safety Manual and Code of Federal Regulations, and probably U.S. Code also. Provide a basic educational component for members working towards qualifications in marine safety and environmental protection and a first step in qualification for the Marine Safety Training Ribbon and the Marine Safety Insignia. Satisfy member basic education requirements in the marine safety and environmental protection. Provide for member recognition and continued. The taskbar is in my way.
It says, and continuing
the education credit. And is that the last slide? That's the last slide. And that is NUSAR, right? So, Bob, is there anything else you want me to cover?
How about the I wasn't clear on the NVICS on the program policy letters.
The NVICS and the policy program letters, they're part of the construct that in which the Coast Guard provides compliance and enforcement. I'm looking for my notes here real quick.
Compliance and enforcement. Okay, thanks.
So the NVICs are updates from the commandant regarding anything having to do with marine safety and compliance and enforcement. And the policy letters are similar, except that they are often work on a unique subject or situation.
Thanks.
And James just put in the chat a link, but yeah, like someone else said, Jeff said that it really is not hard. If you Google NTC, which is the abbreviation for National Training Center, just type in your Google or search engine Bling, whatever you got there, auxiliary NTC, and it should come up right like that. Wonderful. All right, and you can stop sharing, David, and we can. And anybody that wants to turn their camera on, I got all dressed up tonight. So if you want to say hello or wave, you can turn your cameras back on. If you want to hit stop sharing, Dave. Again, it was a quick night.
Okay.
I hope I didn't talk too fast. And like I said, I'm losing my voice.
Oh, you were perfect. Thank you, David. Let's go down to your reactions, and let's give Dave a little thumbs up encouragement for doing this, even though his throat was killing him. Thanks for doing that. And you guys can turn your camera on if you're in a camera turning on mood. If you're not, that's okay. Missy, did you see real quick, as Dave kind of went through it real quick, I gave you a photo credit. Missy, did you take the picture of that freighter out there on Lake Michigan? Was that your picture? Are you there, Missy? Oh, you're muted, Missy. You got to unmute yourself. Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. I saw a credit, but I missed the picture.
Oh, was that your picture of the freighter, or was somebody else out with you on NewSAR and took that picture?
I'm trying to remember. I took so many pictures, I don't even know anymore.
No.
It might have been somebody else, but I did take some of NewSAR. Yeah,
I wanted to put that in our program. Good. Wonderful.
Well, somebody took it. One of us did.
Mm-hmm. So you got credit. You got a cameo, Missy.
Okay, thank you.
Our pleasure. All right, team. So let me see. It's too bad we can't see all of you at once. But if you have already taken the final exam, where's the reaction thing here? Give me a thumbs up if you've already taken the final exam. Go ahead, and that includes you OXOP people. And Jay, you can put your thumbs. Who else has already taken the final exam? Pam's like, forget the reactions button. I just got a thumb right here. Great job, Pam. Who else? That's it? No, hardly anybody. There's a couple on page 2 here. But one topic that I wanted to share, which I think we hit real lightly, good job, William, is that roll-offs are considered cargo vessels. You know, I thought it meant when you drove your car onto a vessel, it was considered a passenger vessel, but it's not. Roll-offs, roll-on roll-offs, roll-offs are considered cargo vessels. So if I said that it was a passenger vessel, that was my mistake. Jim Lubner, other thoughts?
No. I thought Dave did a great job with the subject matter he had. So kudos to you, David.
Thank you.
Actually, I would second that for all of our instructors. Every one of them did a great job, and I thank you all.
I pasted links to the Code of Federal Regulations and the U.S. Code in the chat if you want to copy those, as well as those links that were on one of the last slides that had for the they're also there also. So if anyone wants links, they're there. I don't know if anybody has any questions. You're welcome to contact me. I'm look on aux officer. I think I'm the only David Klein in the auxiliary. And I'm in.
Pamela, any thoughts on the exam? Was it a hard test, Pamela, or was it something you were able to do well?
It was definitely challenging. Knowing how to look stuff up in the various manuals was a big plus. There was plenty of time to look stuff up.
Yeah, it was once you get rolling, because we have the advantage of having the quiz at the end of this book, which is a good hint. And it says right in the manual, if you take the quiz at the end of the book and you don't get a 90%, then you need to go over the material again and try to do better, because without getting a 90% on the quiz, you're really going to struggle with the online exam.
Yeah.
Jay Katzman, other thoughts?
Well, since I took it many years ago and it's changed about 3 or 4 times already, it was challenging for me as an instructor to sit there and do the 2 chapters that I had to do, especially to make it interesting for all the students, because the one that we had the most on was, why we do things, why are we setting up these programs, was kind of challenging to me to make it interesting for all the students. And I spent, I think, about a month and a half working on it. And you ought to know, Bob, because I kind of did it right up to the last minute there, making sure I had enough slides in there and it was detailed and making changes. So as an instructor, yeah, I would sit there and say the chapters and stuff are challenging. And the disadvantage I had over what the students have now is that there was nobody to help us when I did mine. And I think I did mine in 02 or 03 when it first came out. And it was it was challenging. I didn't have all the resources I needed. I think I spent time in the library. I know I spent a lot of time at MSU going through the safety manuals and anything I could find at the time, because a lot of the stuff was not online. So yeah, I hope this program that we worked on is going to be a boon to future auxiliaries to want to take this program.
And that's due to all the hard work of the instructors here. We have David, Jim, and Jay, and we certainly appreciate Rebecca and Peter, and who am I whiffing on here? One other instructor.
Chris, right?
Oh yes, the new DSO MS. I was excited to do this class out of respect for Chris. I'm a big fan of Chris's. While we, Bill Ackerman, did you take the test already? I see you're raising your hand there, Bill.
Yeah, I did take the test. And I thought it was pretty challenging, but I managed to pass it. I think I spent a lot of time going back to some of the source information when I didn't really have to. The IMSEP guide that we have actually had a lot of it in it. And I didn't realize that because I took it early enough in the class. I didn't read like the second half of the guide. And I think a lot of the answers are actually in there. So I would have leaned a little bit more heavily on the guide, knowing what I know now.
Good. Monique, did you already take the test? I'm trying to remember. You there, Monique?
Yeah, no, I have not yet. Have been really busy. In my Aux Scout program, we're holding a safety at sea at the Coast Guard station, so haven't had a chance to do that yet. But
so, and for those of you that haven't taken the test yet, if you're skittish, I say, oh, I'm not sure if I want to take the test. I'm not sure how I'm going to do. I took 3 times to pass myself. So if you have trouble logging into the National Testing Center, it uses the same password as I believe Aux directory. So you should be able to get in there. And if you need, don't be shy about asking somebody in your flotilla, try to get some help. And if they can't help you, you got my email address. Reach out to me and say, I can't figure out how to get into the National Testing Center. Vicki Huffman, what were your thoughts on the exam?
I thought it was exhausting. I had actually to read a whole bunch of stuff, but I passed.
Did you pass it on your first try?
Second try.
Oh, okay. I was going to be ashamed if you passed it, and I took 3 times. So, but folks, don't be shy about taking a shot at that test. There is no penalty for not passing. And honestly, when you take it the first time and you do somebody reached out to me and said, I'm not used to using the Adobe search function, which I'm just, I wasn't expecting to be able to use it. It's pretty intuitive, because it's in the upper right hand corner of the Adobe. It says type in your keywords, and I was like, oh, that's not hard. And that's how I was able to do better on the test. So, and even if you say there's no way I'm going to pass, just take a crack at it. Just take it once. I got a 66 my first time out, so I was really grabbing for straws there, but I wasn't really using references. I was using my experience with other marine safety issues. Any other questions? It's a little after 8 o'clock. We get to the end of this class and the sessions get shorter and shorter.
Can we review? Could I ask you to just review the review question number 12? I don't have an answer for it.
So the answers are in the book here. You know that, right? A couple more pages beyond there.
None of the choices, so I don't know what that is.
All right. Well, let's talk about question 12. That's fair. It's a public book. The Coast Guard has 5 basic missions. Which is primarily responsible for marine safety? Now, the question is, where would you find the answer for that? So let's go and look at the reference, which is attached to the correct answer. So in here, it says, look on page 11 of your manual to find the answer to that question. So let's go to page 11 of the manual. And obviously, we talked about the structure very early in the class, and we got a little bit into more of the fine details later on. So let's go to page 11 of the book here. And it talks about the sectors. And it is, just like someone else said earlier, you have to read the question fairly closely to see what they're really looking for. So let's go read the question again. And it says, because if you don't have a clear understanding what they're asking, sometimes it's very confusing. The Coast Guard has 5 basic missions, which is primarily responsible for marine safety. So let's find the 5 missions, which should be, I think, on page 11. Although, in the updated manual, they might have moved. Okay, yeah, it's not on 11 anymore. It's more towards 9. So let's look at page 9, because they expanded the manual. Now there's page 11 isn't where it was. Let's look on page 9, and it talks about missions: marine safety, maritime security, maritime mobility, national defense, and protection of natural resources. And the question in the back of the book says, which is primarily responsible for maritime safety? So we use that page 9, page 10, and we look for maritime safety. And if you're looking at
It says marine safety is the question.
Marine safety. Okay, I'm sorry. So you look on page 9 and read the very first thing underneath program. It says marine safety is under maritime safety. And so you notice that it's not given as one of the choices, right? So if you look at the choices are maritime security, maritime mobility, protection of natural resources, those are not marine safety, right? So that tells you that none of the above is the correct answer. Did I beat that horse to death?
Now, what is the primary responsibility? What is the mission of the marine safety?
So if we look on page 9, we can see on page 9 that it says
marine safety is in maritime safety. Okay.
Right. Marine safety, search and rescue, recreational river safety, passenger vessel safety, international ice patrol, and port security. So you get, like Vicky was saying, you kind of wade through this stuff.
You have to figure it out.
Yeah, you kind of wade through it and you dig into it. And really, the exam is really a good opportunity to dig through the Marine Safety Manual, maybe the Bridge Manual, but for sure the book, which is going to help you a lot. And you only need an 80. Some of the tests you need a 90 for IMSEP, but it's so hard, and they want you to learn about it that they said, all right, all you need is an 80, and you're good to go. So when I passed, I got an 88, which was surprisingly good for me. Excellent. It's a hard test, Jerry. Other questions?
Thank you very much.
Our pleasure. Jay, thoughts overall? Oh, go ahead, Dave. You want to say something, Dave?
I was going to say I did try and take the test prior to the session starting, and I totally bombed it. It was 60 something, 63, 68, 60, something like that. So I'm anxious to try it again now that I've taken the course and see how I do.
Right on. Nice. Well, I'm glad you came. I'm glad you're here. Jay, other thoughts about the class overall?
Well, I'm sorry I missed a couple. One night I was in Iowa doing a wedding on a Friday night, and then I took off and went to the mountains to see my son in Sea Springs. I tried to sit there and pop up with them, but other things got in the way, so I'm sorry I missed a couple. Thought-wise, I have to ask the students what they thought. They're the recipients of what we did. And I have to ask you guys, what did you think? Did it fulfill the needs that you needed to get through this course? Obviously, some of us, or some of you basically have already gone through and passed the test. And others, I hear the struggles, which is, typical of any test. So did we meet the criteria? Did we meet the goal of what you guys were looking for?
I thought you went above what I was looking for. I mean, the camaraderie, the instructor's knowledge, and everyone sharing. It was just wonderful.
Well, yeah, that's part. I just want to know if the content made everything. Did we
Well, I
try to
haven't taken
answer
the
all your
test yet.
questions? That's the most important thing. That was our main goal. The main goal was to sit there and did you guys understand what we were doing? Did it help you as a guide to the course? And
Yes.
the best way we'll find out is when you guys pass the test or didn't pass the test, and come back to us and tell us what that was on the test that needed to be covered that we can then turn around and fix the slides that would sort of help cover some of those questions.
Yeah, I thought you guys did a good job.
Thanks, Alan. Did you try the test, Alan? Have you tried it yet?
I did.
How'd it go?
I got an 84 and I did use all 3 hours.
Okay.
Good job.
Great.
Excellent. Commitment. It's a commitment. What other thoughts? David, other thoughts?
Just that if you take it and do not pass, you can print out the questions you missed and you can use those as a reference.
Very important. Excellent.
If you have really bad test anxiety like I do, even if it's open book and there's an extraordinary amount of time to take the test, just remember you have a lot of time. And if something doesn't work immediately, don't feel rushed. There's lots of resources, and as when Jay was talking about when he took it, that was before there were searchable PDFs. In fact, that was before anything was online, really. So that was a situation like if you're a grad student and you spend before the internet, you went and you spent all night in the library in the stacks, recopying journal articles. So it's a lot easier now. And if you just take your time and relax and know you have a lot of time, you should do okay.
Yeah. So let's say you took the test and you got a 60. Let's say at the end of the test, NTC pops up a little screen and says this topic, this topic, this topic. Take the time to make note of those topics. And because you've just taken the test, you may even be able to think of what questions you got wrong. Like I got that cargo one wrong for the roll on, roll off. So now you don't have to get 100%, but if you find information about, it's 50 questions. So that in other words, you missed 20 of the questions. So now let's say you found the answers for 10 of those questions. That's an 80. You're going to pass. So hopefully you go through and look for all the answers so that you can feel a little more confident than just barely passing. But it's designed for you to be able to climb out of the, if you don't pass the first time, climb out of that hole. Good. All right.
And the other thing I'm sorry.
Please
the thing I might mention is don't wait too long between now and taking the test because, well, I don't know, I'm 70, so I don't remember stuff as well as I used to for long periods of time. But in any case, if you wait too long, you're going to start losing. You'll forget you'll forget about the class, and it'll just be that much harder.
Right on. Well, I've gotten some course completions. Not everybody was here tonight from people that passed, and really, I'm elated. I'm elated to see you all succeed. So, give it a crack. Don't put too much pressure on yourself. Take a crack at it, and you'll see that using some of the tools that Rebecca shared and the other instructors have shared, and using the questions in the back of your book as a guide, you're going to do pretty well. And it'd be cool if you passed the first time, but I would be very angry at you because then you're way smarter than me. Just kidding. No, we're proud of you guys trying this class. We're proud of you for being here. Thanks for everything that you're doing for the auxiliary.
Bob, before we hang up with everybody, with a couple questions. One of them was about the NAVIC. And part of the thing with the NAVIC is that it also sits there for the marine inspectors and also the industry when they go over and they find errors or they find deficiencies in sort of in a ship. And I can give a good example. For instance, if they're talking about welding, and in a lot of the ships that are out there, both aluminum and steel and stuff, the NAVIC will sit there and give guidance on how they want to sit there and have a weld. They will sit there and put a procedure in for the weld that'll go in there, where they want the weld, how they want to do it. They'll sit there and go into detail on what kind of weld to put in there. They'll also talk about steel. They'll talk about aluminum, so that if you're going to sit there and have an aluminum boat, they want the aluminum to be a certain grade. If they're doing a weld, they want the weld a certain way. This is what the NAVIC goes into detail with. And most of the time, it goes into the inspection side of ships. It may go into the inspection side of facilities on how they want a particular section to be done. But the NAVICs are available. You can get, but they have to come through a portal, and you can read them. When I was working with inspections, I think the book was about 4 inches thick. It was divided into sections. Yeah, we can go online, but the book was a lot faster, a lot easier to find because we highlighted certain things. We put notes on it so that if we were looking at a particular subject, we could go back to it real quick. NAVICs come out periodically. Sometimes they'll come out on different vessels, on different facilities, on what they find out there in the field. And that's where they make the quick adjustments. And the NAVIC works really well in the industry. So that answers that question. The other question was somebody asked about what the mission of marine safety is. I was looking up in my old book, and I can't, I need a little bit more information on that one. What the question was.
About I think it had to do with the question on about the information on page 9. I think that's what their focus was. I'm pretty sure.
It was review question 12, wasn't it?
Yes.
I went to my old book. I apologize. My old test book is, oh, it had 125 questions. I apologize. So I couldn't answer that one. I apologize. I'm sorry.
Just to follow up on what Jay said about Navix, it's really easy actually to search this kind of stuff. I did, just to try it, I put in my search box, I put in my browser in Chrome. I put NVIC, that's all I put. And I hit the return. And the second thing that came up was the Coast Guard reference to where you could find the NAVICs. And they're arranged by year. The ones were done in 2024, 23, 22, and you can track through them. So if you have a question, don't be afraid to just, put something even very simple into a search box, and you may, without too much trouble, find something. And in fact, Missy, I did that with permit required confined space, and I very quickly got a document on an OSHA document on laws, rules, regulations, standards that actually does define the difference between permit required confined spaces and non-permit required. They both exist.
Good.
Thank you.
More. So go ahead, Missy.
No, I just said thank you.
Oh, our pleasure. Two more things. There was a question. David, did you want to talk about what the OXOP program is and some of the other classes that are required?
I'm not sure. I'd have to go, and it's been so long since I did it. You have to do communications, weather. Who else can anybody help me out?
Seamanship.
Seamanship, navigation.
Or patrols. They took out nav now. You don't have to do nav, which was a pretty tricky test. And,
but yeah, I can't remember, but if you go into the aux data too, it's in there what the requirements are. There's a whole section devoted to it. Or else if anyone has any questions, you're welcome to contact me, and I'll find the information and get it over to you, or at least get you to a place where you can find it. I just put the link to the Coast Guard's NAVIC website in the chat.
Thank you, David.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
As far as the OXOP program, and I can share a little bit of this, is this course is worth 2 credits, and then a leadership course. If you take a leadership course such as the flotilla leadership class, or the APC exam, which is a very challenging exam, this is probably the second. IMSEP is the second hardest test. The hardest one I ever had was APC, Auxiliary Procedures course. But if you take one of the other leadership class, Aux LAMs, leadership and management, those count towards a leadership credit. And then the ones that it was talking about, communications, which is hard. Weather was the other one we forgot about. Weather, which is hard. Aux seamanship, which is if you taught Boat America, it's like Boat America on steroids. It's interesting though. It's pretty good. If you get some good Marine people, they'll be very helpful teaching that class. And then aux patrols. Once you have, I think it's 7 points total, you qualify, and your flotilla commander doesn't tell you, because the computer system tells you when you have enough credits to qualify for OXOP. Now, when you pass this test or pass this class, I can't even see it. I'm looking backwards in a mirror. On here, there's a red one. I think it's this one right here. And that's called the Auxiliary Specialty Ribbon, which, if this is your first OXOP class, and you pass the exam, you will then qualify for the Auxiliary Specialty Ribbon, which looks pretty good if you ask me, and it'll look good on you too. There was one more good question earlier. I think Jerry was asking, and James had an answer about acronyms. James, what did you say about acronyms right at the beginning of the class?
I did a search on, and there was 8 pages of acronyms. So there's several acronyms. I didn't know what they were, so I've bookmarked that so I can go back to it anytime I come up with an acronym. And I was just amazed it was that many pages of acronyms.
And where did you, was that in the auxiliary manual? Where did you find that at?
I did a search. It was a Chrome search. I just Coast Guard acronyms and came right up.
I had a Vicky. I with weather. Go. Who is that? Go ahead.
I just want to make sure they're related. I only want the ones related to marine safety. You know, to the course, not all of everything.
Yeah, I had to just go when one came up in the course. I would go ahead and in my notes, I'd go find it and then I'd write it in my notes, so I had them.
Yeah, Missy, I believe that once you've passed the final exam for this, that you qualify for not the marine safety ribbon, but the auxiliary specialty ribbon. And yeah, double check with your FSO MT, and they can do a little sniffing around. And if they can't find out, I will double check for you. Good. Other questions? Good questions. We have good questions.
There are 92 acronyms in this book.
Yeah, it's a different language, isn't it? Do you speak auxiliary?
No, and nobody should.
Wonderful.
You lose people by doing that don't understand what you're talking about. And I think you lose a lot of people, especially new people, when they just talk acronyms and people don't understand. So it's a problem that needs to be looked at. The other thing is the instructors that went through this course are great. However, whoever wrote the test probably doesn't know what's being taught, or they would have wrote the questions according to the book so that you could look stuff up. You know, it make it, you know, if you have 50% failing the test, then you have a problem, either with the manual or something, or the test writer.
They may have been like people we had in Iowa when we first passed the paramedic law. The person writing the paramedic test was a pig farmer who happened to have a doctorate in education, and the test was horrible.
Yes.
Good. All right, team. I'm going to go ahead and stop recording.
Yeah.